started. Good morning, everyone, and bonjour to those Francophone members of the audience today. As Faiza said, my name is Fred Green. I'm coming to you from Laguna Beach, California, just about 50 miles south of Los Angeles, where I live. And I thought we would start, as all good presentations about audiovisual subjects should, and that is with a audiovisual video. But let me share my screen with you, and I'll be off to the side. I'm going to use the slides to keep me honest, and I've got some notes as well, but hopefully I can do as much extemporaneously as possible. I know we have a dedicated Q&A time at the end of my formal lecture, but I invite you to stop me and interject, ask questions, debate, question, comment, observe, any of those things. So here is a film that maybe you're familiar with. It was the biggest film of 2022, and it was heralded because it was sort of a return to quote unquote normalcy after the long pandemic and people going back to theaters. I'm not sure how relevant it is to you as filmmakers in Africa, but there's a lot of things going on here that I'd just like to touch on. So let's take a look. I call it marketing, or in parentheses, positioning a long-awaited sequel with stars, spectacle, and weapons. And we're going to be talking a lot about positioning later, and also about the power of audiovisual materials in terms of propaganda. Let's have a look.
I'm Josh Horowitz, welcoming you to the USS Midway aircraft carrier for a premiere like no other. Probably 1,000 people on this thing. This is crazy.
Hey, I'm just pinching myself.
We are just moments away from a historic arrival from Tom Cruise. That is not just a helicopter. That's Tom Cruise in a helicopter.
Tom Cruise just landed in a helicopter.
Joining us on the USS Midway, Tom Cruise.
36 years later, and here we are. It's surreal. Top Gun finally is coming out. This is pretty epic. Holy smokes, that's beautiful.
Tom is such a phenomenal actor, and then he's a movie-making machine, and we all reap the benefits of that.
This is your first premiere.
Yes.
First movie with Tom Cruise.
Yes.
When you see what's on the screen, there's truly never been anything like it in the history of film.
I want to thank Tom Cruise, and I want to thank Paramount, and what they've done by representing the work that you do is really to be applauded. And now, someone who needs no introduction to all of you, Tom Cruise.
This day is for you. It's a tribute to you all. And I just can't wait for you to see it.
I'm really thrilled that we're here and we can get to share it with all the sailors and the aviators that we work with.
This is absolutely a spectacular day for the U.S. Navy.
I tell you, this has been a long time coming. Thank you for all you do for our country. And there's something very special about Mexico. They always make me feel so at home. I'm just so happy to be here in Mexico City. Muchas gracias. Here it comes, Tom Cruise.
Top Gun Maverick. Et celui à qui on rend hommage ce soir, Tom Cruise.
Welcome to the UK premiere of 2022's most anticipated film, Top Gun: Maverick.
We're at the royal premiere in London, about to watch our movie with a crowd of people. That is exciting. This is absolutely insane. We took over the entire square.
The anticipation for this movie has been building since the late 80s.
This is very special to celebrate this movie. You just can't fake what we got. And I can't wait for people to see it.
We made this for the big screen. It's challenging on every single level, so to hear the audience's response is very special.
I feel the need.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right. That is what's possible with enormous budgets and one of the world's largest stars, the American military, the English royal family, millions or gazillions of dollars in marketing budget. And the message is for this package, this particular product, and I'm not calling it a film, I'm calling it a product, is that imperialism is awesome and American military might is fun. So there's like, I mean, obviously a rather dangerous subtext to this campaign, but what it's doing is positioning this product in the mind of you, the audience, the recipient, who's probably eager to get back into the theater, who perhaps likes spectacle, who likes stunts, who likes movie stars, and they are telling you that you're going to enjoy an experience that you've had before, and that's an experience with military military action, adventure, maybe a little bit of romance, attractive people, and you know, a heroic kind of conclusion. Let's go back to the slide, and we're going to talk about a number of the things that are taking place in this 3-minute video. I put some of them on the chat board because and we'll circle around back to them. But these are some of the things that are possible to you as marketers, things that you can mobilize and exploit on behalf of your projects. All right, let me share screen. Slide 1. What Faiza did not also mention is that I am a filmmaker as well. I've done 7 documentaries, writing, researching, occasionally co-producing, and then for those projects, I've done a lot of the marketing, both prior, including the lookbooks, the log lines, the synopses, the bios, the overviews, as well as the press kits after the film was produced, and then worked on taglines and trailers. I've taught it, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself later, but I just thought I would put that in there. So the other through line to this talk this morning, in addition to positioning, is going to be about audience. And what takes place in the marketing campaign is this phenomenological encounter between the filmmaker and the film itself, the product, and the audience, or the imagined audience, or the interpolated audience, or the summoned or created audience. And so it's really important to think about what you guys want, what you guys need, what you guys desire, and then in my campaign to try to respond to that expectation, that desire, that want. But I said I thought I would learn a little bit about you, which would help me understand how to present and what to present to you. So in some ways, I'm trying to model this lecture as a kind of marketing and a marketing communicational exchange, where the more I know about you, the more I can ideally satisfy your needs and desires. So here's what I learned, oh, sorry, I'll go to my notes for that one. I've been thinking about you because that's what movie marketing does. It researches, it studies, it imagines, it understands, it summons, it responds to the audience. That's you. And here's what I learned from your bios. There's students with a BA, there's students with BAs, there's students with masters, there's students with a PhD. You guys are producers, directors, writers, researchers, playwrights, teachers, lecturers, journalists, authors, creative directors, on-air personalities, advertising company employees, graduates of elite universities and programs around the world, as well as many of you Afrofuturists and advocates for a better world. I can join you in a number of those claims and descriptions. I also see that you guys are accomplished, determined, and learned. And it's also clear from your bios that you guys are all already well versed in movie marketing, although you may not use the same terminology or understand what you've been doing quite in the same way that I hope to help you understand and appreciate it. One of the things that I had to think about in preparing this lecture is, what can I tell you? Because from your bios, it's clear that you've been doing this work already. So that's my challenge, and I hope to provide some practical advice and how-tos for what I think will be mostly do-it-yourself marketing. My presumption is that you will not have millions of dollars to spend on a marketing budget, and you won't be able to hire a marketing team to do much of the work. So instead, it's going to devolve upon you and task your resources severely. All right, here's just a little bit about me. First thing is, I'm a moviegoer and a consumer. So I too am an audience member, lifelong, of film. My first job in Hollywood after getting my PhD in English literature, where I studied the 19th century and wrote about pastoral, yes, sheep and shepherds, but also politics and gender, was as a marketing manager at Pearson TV, an English company that owns a lot of sort of famous programs. And then after that, I became a marketing advertising copywriter. All the people I knew in Hollywood were in movie marketing. And when I realized I wasn't going to pursue a career as a professor of 19th century English, I thought, well, I better use my writing for something. So I did that. And along the way, I started writing documentaries and researching them. And along the way, as an advertising and print copywriter, I started doing taglines for movie posters. And then eventually I got to start writing the trailer scripts for movie trailers and TV spots and even radio spots. As I said, I had started doing documentary films, which I've done ever since. And one of the documentaries I did was on movie marketing, the history of movie trailers. And because of that research and that scholarship, no one had ever done a documentary on that topic before, and we had pretty amazing access and partners in the industry. I was able to pitch a class to UCLA Film School, and they hired me to teach a movie marketing seminar for a few years. So I was an assistant professor at UCLA Film School, where I focused on movie advertising, but in particular, the trailer and the TV spots and video game trailers and that sort of thing. Along the way, I worked in development, reading scripts and writing coverage. And at one point, some company hired me to be their creative director, which was probably not the wisest choice, but there you have it. So let's go big picture. I call this the establishing shot. And whenever I've been a student or whenever I've entered into a new field, I always like to understand from the view from 30,000 feet, as we say. So literally, why do we go to the market? Because we're talking about marketing, And there is actually, it's kind of a dead metaphor, but beneath that dead metaphor is the actual market, the place where you exchange goods and services and ideas and information. So we go there in a couple capacities, as buyers or as sellers. I guess we could also go as products, but I don't want to talk about that today. Although you could go there as a brand. I just complicated my little rubric here. So I'm gonna, since I haven't prepared on that, I'm gonna hold off for a moment. So I say that we go there to provide information and to obtain information. When you're doing a campaign, you're saying, look what I've got. Here's something new. Here's something that might be interesting to you. And if you go there as a consumer, when you go to your favorite trailer site or just passively watch a movie advertising on television or hear one on the radio, you're learning something, right? You're obtaining information. The other thing we do when we go to market as sellers is we're competing. We're like, don't shop over there, shop here. I've got better produce. My livestock is healthier, right? Whatever it is you have to sell. My film is more entertaining. And of course, on the other side, as an audience, you're there to compare offers. You're there to bargain, right? To negotiate, to get the best deal for your time and money. Another thing we do when we go to the market is we differentiate, or we go to the market to find something new and different. As Kath and Kim, the Australian mother-daughter duo, say, oh, that's nice, that's interesting, that's different. Of course, they are understood to be idiots, but it's still an insight. To find a buyer for surplus production. Now, here's part of what I'll do is a little bit of what do you call it? Political economic critique, because we are living in late capitalism, and therefore we've got a surplus of content. We've got a surplus of supply, too much, chasing too few eyeballs, too much for any one person to consume in a lifetime. So we've got to do something with that surplus, right? We've got to find a buyer for it. We've got to sell it. We've got to make our money back. And then the market is also, it seems to me, a place where, you know, at least in classic economic ideology, that you've got an efficient exchange between buyers and sellers, right? You find the right price because it's just this natural phenomenon that emerges from that market encounter. The goal, I think, with a market exchange is to limit inconvenience, to reward risk, and therefore to obtain some reward from that experience, from that time that you've committed. So now that's sort of, you know, big picture theory of markets and marketing. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about audiovisual entertainment, because it's a different kind of product than a commodity, right? It's different than, say, grain or copper or pork bellies or wheat or oil, things that we need and use on a regular basis, but aren't terribly differentiated. We needed wheat yesterday, we'll need more of it today. We don't need new wheat or exciting wheat, although obviously in America, we've found ways to package and reinvent all kinds of basic things and charge more for them. But let's talk about audiovisual entertainment. So I ask a few questions. One is, what kinds of goods are these? And why does that matter? Would anyone like to volunteer? Does anyone have an answer for that? What kinds of goods are audiovisual entertainments? TV shows, movies, video games? Anyone? All right, we'll get there. I'm never very good at waiting when there's a vacuum of sound. I call them experiential goods. And the reason I call them experiential goods is because it's an experience that takes place. What I called it earlier was a phenomenological encounter, but that's just a fancy way of saying It's something that's taking place in real time between people or among them. And what's different about experiential goods is that we consume them in that moment, right? We don't take them home and store them. I guess you could, right? You could buy a DVD or a Criterion disc and put it in your library and then come back to it. But primarily, the audiovisual entertainment is one that is consumed in that moment, almost like a meal. Right? A meal would also be an experiential kind of product. And I think it matters because we also want something different, and we want something new. Very often, though, we want an experience we've had before, but we want it slightly new, right? Slightly tweaked. We want to see Tom Cruise again, but we don't want to see the same movie. We want to see a different movie with fights and gun battles and car chases and explosions. Okay, so what is this industry called, and how is that different? Well, in answer to that, I'm going to call it the attention industry, and that's the marketplace that's specific to experiential goods, right? And the problem with the attention industry is that we all have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. Some of it which we have to commit to work, and some of it to sleep, and some of it to daily obligations of maintaining life. So we only have so much time to consume these experiential goods, and that, of course, is the problem or the challenge. A very rich person can buy a number of houses, can fill his house or her house with all kinds of consumer products, but he or she has no more time than you do, than anyone does. So part of the problem, part of the challenge in late capitalism, last half of the 20th century, is finding new markets, maybe creating new markets, finding new audiences to consume all this glut of products that we keep producing. Again, I use the term product because I've got my marketing hat on right now. If I'm a filmmaker, then I'm going to talk about my art, right? I'm going to talk about my craft. I'm going to talk about this baby that I have been gestating through the process of development and sacrificing time and blood and sweat and tears to making. Okay, and that's very important to distinguish those things. But right now we're cold-hearted, shark-eyed marketers, and all we're thinking about is, I've got this product, I got to get it to market, I got to get someone to pay me for it, and so that I can continue making more of these things, so I can develop my own career, so I can make my investment back, right, and repay the investors. Right. So who are the consumers of such experiential goods, and what do we call them? Well, I say everyone is or is potentially a consumer of such goods, and what we call them is audiences. All right, again, that word that will come back. So who is the audience and how do we know it? I have at least 4 different ways of sort of identifying the audience or understanding who it might be. And that is, the first is you imagine it. You're like, well, I'm a person, I like certain things. Other people seem to like certain things in the same way I do. So I'm going to exercise my imagination and assume that other people are like me, or like my family members or my friends, and that they have similar tastes and desires in terms of entertainment. And that's probably how movie audiences were imagined or thought of for the first, 50 years since the invention of moving images. And then research and testing came into the picture. I think it's as old as, I think it's like post-World War II that an industry really develops and begins looking at what people like, what people say about what they like, and starts testing their reactions to films. This, of course, takes money and budgets, and therefore tends to be done in the classic Hollywood or let's say the French or the English, where these enormous film industries allow or have the resources to allow that sort of thing to be done. Right now, research and testing is ubiquitous in the United States, and we now have lots of tools that are much less expensive and that are accessible to all of us. I'm thinking SurveyMonkey, for example, or the various other imitators of that. So you can create and distribute for free a survey to hundreds of people, and you can ask them questions. You can share something with them and say, what do you think? And you can learn about what their goals are when they go to the movies, what kind of films they like, what they don't like, and perhaps more specifically, what they think of what it is you're sharing with them. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the do-it-yourself section, because I think there's a lot to be said about that research that you can do it yourself. Sorry, that you do yourself. We also have audiences that are self-proclaimed and self-organized. For instance, fans, fan communities, fan sites. When Harry Potter books sold by the millions, Hollywood realized, oh, we've got a built-in audience right there. Let's give, let's give Ms. Rowling billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and buy the rights to them, because we know there's an audience out there that wants that. And then we've seen that with TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, people who are influencers who create a brand for themselves and establish a followership. Suddenly they have a built-in audience. People who write books, people who do famous or important things or exciting things, or are even involved in scandals, they have an audience, okay? And sometimes you can mobilize that audience to come out and purchase your product or see your film. And I think that there's also a lot of audience creation, which is, we've got a product, we're going to go out into the marketplace and using these incredibly powerful tools of psychological manipulation, by which I mean advertising, publicity, promotion, we are going to draw into existence a group of people who never knew that they really wanted this product, but now they do. They never realized that they were just dying for this particular film or this particular subject. That's a little bit more sophisticated, and I think, as I've described it, sounds a little more nefarious. But remember, you are working with the most powerful tools of psychological manipulation, I think, ever devised. And it's no surprise that the very beginnings of movie marketing are at the very beginnings of propaganda film. I'm talking 1916, when the goal was to get the United States to go into World War I. And suddenly they realized, oh, we've got these amazing films that just happen to bypass people's critical barriers and reach them in their emotional centers, right? It's not a rational argument that's being made here. It's something that's speaking directly to your reptile brain, if you have heard that term. All right, let's move on. Here we have just a chapter heading slide, so that's a quick one. What is marketing? I've worked in marketing for the last 25 years, and I have to say, I'm reluctant, or I'm hesitant to call myself a marketer, because I'm not so proud of what most marketing is and does. But a colleague who was really excellent at it and seemed to be enthusiastic about it explained it to me this way. It is a conscientious, strategic plan to shorten the sales cycle, right? And you're like, what does that mean? She just said it's shortening the sales cycle. So basically it's moving from need to purchase, or from presumed need or imagined need or created need to buying it, by putting some money down, buying the ticket, ordering a streaming service, going to the library and renting a video or DVD. And film marketing then is a conscientious strategic plan to create the want to see. And I'm use that in quotations. When we were doing the documentary on movie marketing, we were talking to a lot of the men and women who were trailer makers and the most distinguished in their industry. And that was a term that just kept coming up, creating the want to see. Do I possibly have a question out there? Or was that just throat clearing chat? Let's see. All right. All right. And then, as I think I mentioned before, here in our particular political economic moment, the problem is not supply, but demand, right? Attention is limited, time is scarce. Too many products in search of consumers, so new markets, new audiences can be found. And because suppliers, that is filmmakers, producers, investors, need to recoup the investment and make a profit, we need to identify customer needs and service them or supply them. And we sometimes need to create customer needs and supply them. You see that happening in all sorts of consumer products where people didn't know that there was a problem until advertising told them there was and then provided a solution. All right. Marketing, this is a slide that I'm going to just go through this quickly. We can recur to this later, but marketing management has evolved to help with these problems, with these challenges. And basically marketing management has just mobilized a whole lot of social sciences and big data in order to convince or persuade, I guess, the people who make decisions about what films get made that they should make these decisions or choose this particular product or go in this particular direction in order to make a commercially viable film or to find an audience for it. So marketing now is approaching a science. I still think it's mostly mired in social science, and therefore it's very narrative, it's very interpretation heavy, it's very it relies on assumptions that may not, ultimately be sound ones. And right now, from what I understand, it's very often used to CYA, which is cover your ass. It's basically a really good way when your film bombs and you're a studio head or a marketing head, you can say, we did the research. Everybody told us they wanted to see this movie. It's not our fault that it bombed. It's the director's fault. It's the producer's, it's the writer's fault. And then I say, imagine a world where marketers realize their dreams. And I think that's a dystopian world because, I mean, if you can imagine an actual science of marketing would be a science of psychological manipulation, and we would really be in more of a pickle than perhaps we are. All right, let's get to it. Just some examples. Classic marketing has three components. And again, this is something you probably already know and have internalized, but it's sort of nice to understand the rubric. There's advertising, there's promotion, right? You've got your poster, you've got your trailers, the promotions, the red carpet, the event, the stunts, I have a whole list on another page that I'll share with you as well. Publicity, you see, why can't I think of his name? He was Freddie Mercury in, help me out here. Here he is on a press junket. It's kind of hard to tell that, but when a film opens, very often they will make the stars or the crew available to the press. This happens at film markets. This happens prior to the launch of a release of a film. And so these people go on a tour and talk to journalists, and ideally the journalists will write an article about how nice or how interesting that particular star is. Meanwhile, the whole, the point is emphasize the film that's just about to come out. And then we have more advertising, a billboard, right? And that was a billboard for a film called 3 Billboards Outside Somewhere, Missouri, starring Frances McDormand. I think it did actually win an Academy Award. And then here's, feel free to steal this slide. I'm not sure that it's absolutely authoritative. I pulled it together, and then I was arguing with one of my friends who's a publicist about this. And she in particular does product placement, and she just thought it belonged somewhere else. But here we have all kinds of things that you can do. Advertising, print, you got newspapers, posters, magazines, audio, visual, trailers, TV spots, right? The different kinds of media, digital, outdoor, radio, what have you. Perhaps we're on the cusp of inventing some sort of new media form. And when we do, we will use it to advertise and market. Publicity, things like press junkets, celebrity interviews and articles. People seem to love reading about celebrities, and we also put them on the covers of magazines, and that seems to sell magazines as well. Anything about your production, if it's interesting or something something went terribly wrong, or it was incredibly challenging, that too can be news and something that you can pitch. That can be a story that you can get a local journalist or maybe even a national or international journalist to write about. Scandals and stunts, they say there's no bad press. So if something goes terribly awry or some scandal occurs, that too can be exploited, right? Again, we're using ugly language to describe the shark-eyed, heartless business of marketing. I mentioned fashion covers, entertainment news. In the United States, we have all these shows that are dedicated 24/7 to following what people in Hollywood are doing. By Hollywood, I just mean in general, like Western film creation. I suspect that in major markets in all across the African continent, you probably also have shows or at least webisodes and print coverage about similar kinds of things. Celebrities in the news, film making in the news. And then promotion, events, red carpets, premieres, giveaways, contests. I put merchandise here, tie-ins. In the United States, it's very common when an enormous film comes out, say Black Panther 2 or Black Panther 1 or a Star Wars franchise, that they'll create all kinds of merchandise, junky stuff that they'll sell at Christmas or holidays or just when the film comes out. And people like to associate with the films they love. And so they might buy these things, these toys, these t-shirts, figurines, that kind of thing. Product placement is huge. And I guess it's just a subtle form of advertising, but usually it's a different product. For, let's say, for James Bond films, Aston Martin was always the car that he drove, and it's very subtly saying, this is the car that you would drive if you were an international spy. The famous example I can think of is in the film E.T. about the extraterrestrial. They approached M&M's, the M&M company, and said, would you like to have your M&M's be the candy that the ET likes? And M&M said, no, it's not for us. So they went to Reese's Pieces, Reese's like chocolate peanut butter things, and they made these little pieces that looked like M&M's but were chocolate and peanut butter. And suddenly that product just became a $1 billion industry because it was associated with that film. So I have a girlfriend who works at Warner Brothers in product placement, and so she literally will bring in millions of dollars to the production because she goes out to the car companies and the Apple computer companies and dish soap and whomever, and just gets those in the shot. So if those things are in the shot, that company is going to pay you for that, or give you all the product you could use and then maybe something else, and maybe even use your film in their advertising. So there's these synergies that have developed. And of course, if you are making a big budget film, it's nice to have some of your budget paid for by somebody else rather than the studio or an investor. All right. And then advertising, publicity, and promotion in the digital age. I just wanted to again, show you things you're probably familiar with, but there's so many websites that are devoted to servicing the interests and tastes of fans of audiovisual promotion or audiovisual entertainment. So 12 essential sites for cinephiles, people love them. This is a little hard to see, but it's a fan trailer. That means it was not an official trailer cut by anyone associated with the film. It was cut by a fan who loved the movie, The Sound of Music, and they made it into a horror film. So in 2 minutes, they present The Sound of Music, right, with Julie Andrews and, singing and skipping across the Swiss countryside. They made it look like a horror film in terms of sound and color and editing. And it's fun. It's something that film lovers and fans enjoy doing. And oddly enough, at the same time they're doing that and having fun, they're also marketing your film. They're also drawing attention to this product. It's really amazing. I can't think of many other industries where people will spend so much time and energy helping you to promote your own product or to advertise your own product. I mean, someone who's selling soap powder just has not created a fan base that's going to repurpose that soap powder and make parody soap powder products, right? And advertise your items. And I think that's one of the, and then of course, this is the Avatar official website, or I think it is, or, oh, it's Trailer Addict, sorry. It's, but I visited all the different materials that you could see at Trailer Addict about Avatar. And so you'll see key art, you'll see clips, you'll see all this sort of materials that they want to be public. They want you to see, they want you to enjoy, share with friends, and get excited about the movie that's about to come out. Again, this is very focused on what Hollywood can do and what these big budgets can do. So let's now think about what you guys are able to do with the resources that you have, and the talent that you have. I think I'm gonna come back to that and just go to, yeah, I think I mentioned that. I think I've said some of those things. Product focused, yeah. This is a very different set of skills than making movies, and it requires a different mental attitude. So as you'll see, one of the things I say, and this is also a slide that I think I've just discussed earlier, but there's so many ways right now that we can distribute our content, given the emergence of social media and of course the digital revolution since the 90s. But word of mouth still matters. It's just that word of mouth is now amplified a zillion-fold because of the tools that we have at our disposal, whether Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or what have you. A little bit of Oprah, free samples for everyone. That is one of the ways you're going to market your film. You're going to give some of it away. You're going to let people sample it before they taste it for real. Just like in, I'm not sure if this is common in markets or grocery stores in the African continent, but in the United States, sometimes in the grocery store, there's someone cooking up something or cutting up little pieces of cheese and crackers and handing it to you as you walk by. And the goal is, eat this cheese, eat this cracker, and then buy the cheese and buy the cracker. So you get a sample. And I've always thought that this is the genius, of movie marketing, is that you're giving something away. You're letting people know what the product is before they actually have to pay for it. So it occurs to me that a lot of what takes place for independent filmmakers in terms of marketing their products, in terms of waging the campaign for attention and eyeballs, is something you guys have already been doing and are doing right now. I call these paratextual marketing opportunities, because they're associated with the film text itself, they're around and outside. And some of these are very much micro microcast, because it's about your network, your friends, people that you are in contact with, versus a radio ad or a TV spot or a movie trailer that's going to be shown to millions of people who've never heard your name before. So just the fact that you are, let's say, participating in a career accelerator program at Durban means that you are being tracked, right? And in the nicest possible way, because Durban is now following you, and other film festivals are going to be aware of you. Or you can put it on your resume, I participated in this, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, you're vetted, we know you, you're part of this world. Okay, I know these, it's baby steps, but these things matter. And in this industry, sometimes it does take years to get the money, to get the co-production, to attain, develop the skills, and to create the buzz. So pitch festivals, for example, are something where you're like, here's a great idea, here's what I'd like to do with it. And suddenly somebody says, oh, that's great, we're going to give you an award. The company, the nonprofit I work for, excuse me, goes to these things, participates as jurors. I do that myself. And then we choose people that we think are really promising. So it's one way to get money and to get attention, and as well as mentoring. Sizzle reels. This is, you don't have a film, but you've shot a little footage, and you're going to try to get people excited. It's something you can share. It's something you can show. And these days we can share things pretty much for free. Obviously, it takes work and effort to find the sites and to post it, but there's no cost of publishing that other than your own sweat equity. Labs and workshops and festivals, you're participating in them means that you are waging your campaign already. It's early stages, but you are creating buzz, you're creating awareness of your product in the marketplace, and hopefully excitement for seeing it be produced. Question? Anyone? Okay. Lookbooks, which are a little bit more advanced it's like a sizzle reel, but in writing. As you'll see, there's a lot of writing to be done as a filmmaker. It's not just you and your camera. And your marvelous ideas and your actors. The lookbooks, what you are selling, and it's all kind of a promise. You haven't made the film yet, but here's what I want to do. Here's what I think it will look like. Let's see who's excited about that. Let's see if I can find an audience for that, or an investor, because investors are also audiences. In some ways, they're the audience you're trying to reach at that pitch festival. The co-producer, perhaps, or the funding site, the nonprofit that wants to give you money or give you support and encouragement. Those horrible 2-page things that you have to put together with a log line and a synopsis and an overview and a bio. That's one of the things I specialize with at IEFTA, is helping our filmmakers do the best 2-pagers they can to position themselves, right? To find some space in the mind of the audience or the reader that will light a spark or elicit some interest. Your project website, your project diary, your production diary, excuse me. These are things that you can do, I believe, for free. You can set up websites these days anywhere all over the world using or at least there's a minimal charge per month to maintain it, and you can start putting up, you can blog post, you can put up images, you can report your progress, and people will visit it, people will share it. You can, of course, do that, do much of that work yourself, of sharing it, of posting it, of creating new content so that the web crawlers find it and update it and link to it. Okay. Press kits typically are done when your project is finished, and that's going to, and we call them EPKs because now they're digital, but they used to be, you used to get a 20-page report basically about the film, and it's going to have bios, it's going to have a synopsis, it's probably going to have an about the production section where all the people who worked on it say, oh my God, it was so great working with this person, or, oh, it was unbelievable. We were in a, we were filming a movie about a flood or a tsunami, and we had a tsunami, and like a tsunami. So suddenly that becomes news. The EPK, we call it a press kit because it's really made for the press. And I'm going to talk a little bit in detail about that because I had the privilege of talking to our press publicist consultant at IFTA yesterday, and he had some really specific things to do.
Fred, just before you go on to press kits, we've got a question here.
Hello. Hi, Fred. This is, I'm Hallie.
Hi.
This has been amazing. I think like my creative strategist brain really loves this, talking about experiential marketing. So thank you so much for this. I wanted to ask about, I think we're so deep in our films all the time that it's really hard to understand what is valuable. And when someone asks you what's special about your film, you're like, all of it, And if you could tell us a little bit more about how to think about positioning for the market, especially in things like log lines, that would be really helpful.
Okay. I'm glad you asked because, and by the way, feel free to screenshot anything. And if we don't, because, there's a ton of content. Here's sort of my best practices. And I promise your question is answered in here. But I think, how about this? When I started working on that documentary about trailers, the question is, what about this product is saleable or commercially exploitable, right? Again, take off your creative filmmaker hat and put on your shark-eyed marketing hat. And is it sex, right? Is it spectacle? Is it Tom Cruise flying a fighter jet? Is it a tsunami, right? Is it a disaster film? Is it romance? Is it a family drama? Is it cerebral? Is there something new and exciting that's never been shown on film before? A lot of us are documentary filmmakers, so we're obviously working more in that vein rather than in the spectacle and stunts and stardom arena. But a lot of times your documentary film can exploit those elements because it's historically interesting and there might have been someone famous involved, right? So news is always saleable. Drama, depending on the particular storyline, is one of those elements that people are interested in. Obviously, celebrity does very well. Outrage also tends to work, especially in the documentary film. We're talking about often terrible things, crimes, or just oversights, historical and present day. And you can summon people's outrage and get them engaged, in the same way that the news likes to lead with horrible stories. That seems to somehow just pass through our filters and wake up our brains. And that's dangerous, of course, but that is, right now we're not talking about ethical marketing. We're talking about effective marketing. So here I say, let's go to my notes on this one. Fire yourself as head of marketing. And I'm only sort of kidding about that, but it's possible that you've got someone on your team who may be better suited to this role, or you really, you sort of physically have to distance yourself and maybe even work in a different place, put on a hat that says, this is my marketing hat. So you're constantly reminding yourself, this is a product, this is not this is not the result of 7 years of my life that I've, eaten, breathed, died for. This is a product that I have to sell. And so the understanding in the industry is that the director is typically too close to the project, right? But I know that we don't have that option. All the projects I've done with my collaborator Marco, I think that's 5 or 6 of them, we haven't really had a big budget to do that. We've just had to rely on our experience, our knowledge about marketing to do it ourselves. And there's been some money to hire a graphic designer to help with the lookbook, for example, or to create a website. But those are things that many of you digital natives have that skill set already. If you can't fire yourself, I say find a key collaborator who can co-manage this process with you, and create psychic distance between your roles. I think I just said all those things. And again, to come back to your question, Hallie, as a copywriter, when I was tasked with writing a tagline or a trailer script, again, I would just say, what is it about this film that people will want to see? And I'd make a list of all the things. And then I would write copy in response to those things. Because, a film isn't just spectacle. It usually is spectacle and there's a story, right? And what's that story? It's a spectacle and it has a star and there's some drama and there's some romance and maybe there's something sexy, as it were. Those are the things that appeal, and you can write taglines, or in other words, you can write a commercial appeal on any of those lines that engages with any of those desires. And along the way, you might find, oh, that's a really good line. Like, it's not like in advance. Sometimes it just pops out of your unconscious, of your creativity while you're doing this. And then you look, you very often when I was doing a tagline exploration, I'd turn in 40 to 60 ideas, 2 lines. We're going to look at some a little bit later, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Conduct your own market research. Again, surveys, SurveyMonkey is pretty good in terms of a website that's free and provides you these tools. And I think it allows you to survey like 500 people for free. Obviously, if you want more sophisticated analytical tools, they have a subscription model, but it's not prohibitively expensive. The other thing is show your movie to friends, show clips of it to friends, show clips of it to people you barely know who are willing to look at it. In the industry, they would do these test screenings and then hand out little note cards and people could write things on them. The term in the industry for those are idiot cards. So hand out some idiot cards, let people have their say. And by the way, whatever they say is not wrong. It's just you may not want to hear it, but their impression they're entitled to that impression. They are an audience. They may not be your audience. And it's good to know who isn't your audience as well. Show to friends, listen to what other people think. They are not wrong. Oh, make a list of comparable films. Imitation is a pretty good strategy too, if you don't have a lot of money and you're sort of new to the game. How did someone else market a film that's sort of like yours? Again, a documentary, maybe one that's involved with the environment or social justice or historical atrocity. Like, how did other people do it? Well, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Now, publicity, and I'm mindful of the time, but I think we only started at 5:10, so I think I'm good for another 10 minutes, yes, before we do full Q&A? Okay, thank you. Create your own publicity. And I had come up with a few ideas, but then I spoke to an expert and he really helped me with this. And he said, production photographs. He's like, and he works on so many independent projects. Right now, he's repping a film called Farah, which is Jordanian's submission for the Academy Awards. And it's apparently a marvelous film. He works a lot in Middle Eastern and North African projects, as well as European, but typically independent stuff. He says you need production photos, and he's talking literally 300 DPI and at least 1.5 megabytes. If you don't have good photographs, they're not going to be used by the website or the newspaper. They really do need high quality, high res images. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's very in the weeds. And you need at least 6 different shots. So when you're filming, don't think you're just going to do a screen grab later. Have someone, and maybe that's going to be you. Maybe, maybe you have no production photographer, but that on that particular day, that's going to be you or your producer or your co-director or your cinematographer. Get good photographs. And again, costumes, stars, the setting, those are all good potential pieces, and you're going to need them anyway because you're going to need key art. You're going to need the kind of image that represents your film. I talk about that a little bit later, and that might be a slide I just share with you. When you're trying to get publicity on your own, one of the ways you do that is you create a press release. You write a press release. I sent FISA some examples that my friend Gary had sent to me. And basically it's not a letter, it's a story with a headline. It's almost a news article. And it's a press release because it's for the press. And when you do a press release, you just have to think of it this way. Journalists get millions of these every day, and they too are beset by deadlines and overwhelmed with work. Do their job for them. Basically, if you can write a decent press release, very often they'll just reprint it. And then they've got content, they've done their job, and you did all the work. So make it easy for the journalist. You're going to send photographs with that. And the other thing you might do, and again, you guys all live in communities. Maybe your actors, maybe one of you on the team, on the production, is an interesting local person or a local celebrity, or has some claim to newsworthiness. Think about that. And you offer, when you reach out to journalists or online aggregators of press releases, offer an interview, offer and request a review. Let's say you've got a film, you're like, we'd love to have you review our film. Oh, and this particular star of our film, who's such an interesting person, is available for an interview by phone, by Zoom. They'll come to your office. They'll, sit in the radio booth with you. So local news and radio. I seriously just use Google. Check, find out who are, and most of these entities have a contact page. Write them. And don't just write them, follow up, because nobody reads emails anymore, right? Everyone's getting millions of them. So you say, oh, I sent you an email last week, call them. Unfortunately, part of marketing is doing that hard work of actually soliciting people in person, one by one. It's not all broadcast. Publicity in particular. Create from the key art that you've done, right? You've got your production photos. Create a poster. You put up a tagline on it. And then maybe some local businesses, and you say, can I put this in your window, right? Cute little poster. Take some wheat paste and post it on a telephone pole or a wall, right? Do wild posting, which means that you literally are doing your own, you're putting up your own, they're not billboards, but your own posters wherever you can find a space, and hopefully you won't get arrested for that, for vandalism or there's also these newswire services in the United States, IndieWire, for example, or in Hollywood, Deadline, or all of the entertainment websites have a contact, an info at Deadline or contact at, and you can submit your press release to them. They're getting thousands of them a day, but there's no reason that you shouldn't submit to them, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for new content. They're looking for stories. They've got to refresh their website daily, and they've got to have new and interesting things to do with that with. Key art. All right, hang on. I will, let me jump into key art and visuals. By the way, Faiza, I will send you some of these pages and you're welcome to share, just because there's a lot on here, and unless you're writing really quickly or are a shorthand expert, you may not get all these things down. Key art and visuals. So key art is a photograph that captures the emotion or evokes the spirit of your film. You can have more than one, right? And these are going to be, you're going to get some great shots with your production photography. And then you're going to think, which one is most representative of my film, most emblematic of it, or most sort of emotionally fraught and evocative. Take photographs of your cast, your set, your location, your production, your costumes. Select the best ones. Those are likely contenders for key art and visuals. All this material you should be posting on your website, on your Facebook, on your TikTok, on your production diary, on your website. Give it fresh content. There's nothing, people love photos, apparently. Instagram seems to be testimony to that. Do interviews, B-roll. So one of the days when you're taking production photographs, have somebody go around. It might be you, might be your cinematographer, and interview the actors and the crew. What do you think of this project? How did you get involved? What's the most exciting thing you've done? The basic questions that are designed to elicit something interesting that will be appealing or, again, of interest to an audience member or someone who comes to your website. I would say collect images from where you are right now, from your film labs, from your workshops, from your pitch sessions, anything of your production team. If you're ever on a red carpet, get those images. The step and repeat background and wave to the camera, that sort of thing. Put those up, post them. It's free, it's mostly easy to post that stuff. I then have a page about copy, which is, probably something I can really go deep on because I've done it for 25 years, but I will share that. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Hallie, I found the line, the exact section that you were asking about, where I say, what are the saleable elements of your film? Romance, sex, suspense, stars, action, spectacle, violence. I forgot violence. People love violence. News and info, scandal, surprise, discovery. Part of this, though, is you have to make a decision. And I think for most of you, it's going to be easy because these are passion projects. So you want to represent the film as it really is. In Hollywood, for example, though, we make a lot of films that are just terrible, but they're expensive. So you might need to misrepresent that film just a little bit in your marketing to get someone to buy a ticket, right? And hopefully you can open big enough that you've made your money back before people realize that it's a terrible film and they tell their friends. Remember, word of mouth is the most powerful, but it's also the most deadly. Like, bad word of mouth will kill your film, which is one of the reasons you want to make sure that in your marketing materials, you want to find an audience, but you also want to let an audience that won't be able to enjoy your film know that this is not for them. You don't want that audience buying tickets because they're going to hate it and they're going to tell all their friends that they hated it. So you'd rather not have their, whatever the price of a ticket is, and you don't want them bad mouthing your film because it really is powerful. Okay, last thing I want to say, and I'll just zip down to positioning. Essential, I'll share that as well. Essential considerations. Positioning. It starts with a consumer and a real or perceived desire or demand. And positioning is what you do to the mind or in the mind of the prospective audience. It's really like, it's placing an idea in someone else's mind. So it is communications. It's communications, though, with an agenda, right? It's potentially manipulation. I'm putting this out there and I need you to think about it in this way. And that real estate inside someone's head is invaluable. And so with your cold-blooded marketing hat on and shark-eyed approach to recouping your investment and advancing your career, you are going to format that person's brain to receive the product that you have to offer them, the entertainment. And ideally, you will actually deliver the promised satisfaction, the promised want or need or desire that they have. And I'll finish it with a reminder that audience is everything, except it's constantly changing and it's dynamic. And then this one, you guys have the skills to do this. A lot of the people I know in marketing were frustrated filmmakers. So they're like, well, I guess I have to do marketing now because I can't make films. You guys are making films. So thumbs up for that. You know, give yourselves a pat on the back. And you have the skills. You have visual skills, you have storytelling skills, you have writing skills. Unfortunately, when you don't have big budgets to hire a marketing team, once again, everything comes back to you. But you know what? You chose this. You chose this life, and I guess it's a rewarding one because you have autonomy and you have creative outlet. So remember that as you sacrifice your sleep and your social life and everything else to complete your film. Thank you guys so much for your attention. I will be glad to answer questions at this point. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit now, I think.